Charlie Kirk is assassinated, apparently by a leftist, and thousands celebrate. What's going on?
Charlie Kirk was a f***ing Nazi. And you know what kind of Nazi is the best Nazi? A dead one. That does not make me a bad person for thinking that bad people should not be in this world.
And let me just say this. I'm surprised that y'all didn't get rid of him sooner. And I'm surprised that you guys aren't getting rid of more people. Like, don't stop with him. Don't let him be the end all. Get rid of them all.
So this is the show where we analyze political situations, not with emotion or partisanship, but with our fundamental rules and principles. We start every analysis with the core four rules: liberty, responsibility, justice, and checks and balances. There are two rules pertinent to this situation: the liberty rule and the checks and balances rule. The first is the liberty rule. You're free to do as you wish, as long as you don't harm others. Charlie was free to do and say as he wished, as long as he didn't harm anyone. Those who wanted him dead claim he was harming people with allegedly hateful and offensive speech. Is hateful speech a form of harm? Harm is interference with another's life, liberty, or property. Charlie expressing an opinion in public was not a threat because there was no reasonable apprehension of an impending physical or mental injury. And it wasn't harassment because the people were free to avoid the speech altogether. As Thomas Jefferson said a long time ago, it does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. In other words, you can be a racist, hateful, transphobic, Nazi, fascist scumbag as long as you don't actually harm anyone. Otherwise, every time someone said something mean, they'd be getting arrested, like in Britain. We don't quite do that in America, not yet. Ironically, as it turns out, Charlie wasn't a racist, hateful, transphobic Nazi. They got them all wrong because they failed to follow the checks and balances rule.
For the past 3 days, man, I've been sitting around just listening to this guy, Charlie Kirk's message, because every single place that I hear, especially from black people, is that this man was a racist. You guys need to be ashamed of yourself. I heard him say some of the most uplifting things. Countless interviews of friends of his that were black that spoke so highly of this man.
While Leah Thomas had earned Charlie's well-founded scorn, Charlie's treatment of trans and gay people he interacted with was uniformly kind. Watch.
I do not have hate for a group. I do not have hate for a people.
So you do not hate the LGBT community, and Turning Point is not against LGBT.
No, how could I hate that which I have a heart for?
Thank you.
You're really good at lying out of your
what have I lied about? Name one thing I lied tonight about. Name give some examples. Where did I lie or say a stat that's not true?
You need to work on not doing confirmation bias.
One of our core Western principles is Nullius and Verba, which is Latin for take nobody's word for it, see for yourself. And this principle is the basis for the checks and balances rule. Anyone or thing with government power must be checked by at least two independent entities. This describes not only how government institutions should be structured to ensure that no one has too much power, it also describes how we should approach political information. That's the thing with government power. So the people who hated Charlie got their ideas secondhand from social media, the mainstream media, or leftist institutions like the Southern Poverty Law Center, which put Turning Point USA, Charlie's organization, on its hate map. They lied about Charlie and Turning Point in order to cast them as the oppressor. AOC is still doing it even after Charlie's death.
We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake.
The Civil Rights Act didn't give Black Americans the right to vote. The 15th Amendment did that a century earlier. Then, the Voting Rights Act in 1965 removed the barriers that states were still using to block Black people. Here was his actual point.
You said the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so the parts of the Civil Rights Act were great, but the way it's now being implemented to force men in female bathrooms to push forward of the trans agenda, the intent of the Civil Rights Act is way beyond what it was originally authored for.
So the best check on secondhand political information is the original source. Anytime you hear someone describing what someone else has said, especially if it's a political figure, don't believe it until you've listened and looked at the original source in full context. So that's the analysis with the core 4 rules, but we're still left with a huge question.
Y'all weren't able to beat him in a debate, so you shot him. And I say y'all. I know it was only one guy that did it. I say y'all because everybody cheering for it and everybody that's happy for this, you're part of it. You might as well pull the trigger as well.
How could someone think killing someone for saying something, quote, hateful is a legitimate thing to do? We discussed leftism in our last show. Political justice is social justice. Second, they only see people as oppressed or oppressor, not as individuals. Third, any means are necessary to achieve social justice. And there it is. Any means are necessary, including killing someone for offensive speech. Remember, when a leftist looks out on society, they don't see individuals, they only see identity groups, oppressed and oppressor. When you don't see individuals, you don't see individual rights. No individual rights, no right to life. Under leftism, rights are given by the central authority to oppressed people. Oppressors are expendable if they oppose the revolution or question the status of an oppressed person in any way. So when a leftist says, by any means necessary, it's another way of saying, we're not playing by your rules or laws because we have a different system of justice. Your laws are based on traditional justice, punishing people who harm others. Leftist laws are based on social justice. And in leftist world, expressing opinions that cast any shade on the status or happiness of an oppressed person threatens their very existence. Because categorizing yourself or others as a member of an oppressed group is a subjective choice, which could change at any minute. So challenging the alleged oppression is a challenge to their very existence. So the bottom line is we have two completely opposite political societies jammed under the same roof in America, and they're not compatible. You see, justice is the glue that holds society together. If you have two different definitions of justice, you have two different societies. So what can we do about this? Three things. First, in a purely political, structural sense, we need to bring back federalism, in which the states are truly independent. Remember, the average American state is the size of many countries around the world. And then you can have different political societies existing in separate states under the American Federation. You don't have all 360 million Americans jammed together under one system. Second, we must follow the Nullius and Verba principle. Take nobody's word for it. See for yourself. Always check original sources before you believe anything about anyone else. And finally, we have to continue the work of Charlie Kirk by engaging with the left in civil discussion wherever possible and spreading the knowledge of our core rules and principles. We have to, because if we don't, leftism will obliterate individual rights in America and around the world. And Charlie understood that. That's why he was out there trying to talk to leftists, to convince them to see reason, to see logic. The best way to prepare for this is by studying the greatest thinkers of all time, as Charlie did.
Plato came up with this amazing idea. He came up with this idea of philosopher kings, where that in a society properly constituted, you will have a group of experts that know better than you that will call shots. So think about what we just talked about 10 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. That's how the World Economic Forum operates, a bunch of philosopher kings. Whereas Aristotle said, no, we must create men into great men. That the citizen must become sovereign himself, and then you will be governed by yourself, that every person can do that and can become wise.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so I'm much more Aristotelian. I could talk about Aristotle all day long. He's changed my life. I wish more Americans knew about Aristotle.
Absolutely.